Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review this little video that I found to be very particularly interesting. And when it comes down to it, this is going to be a video from that of Mr. Boxing Ego, who is a channel that, of course, if you've been around my channel long enough, that I like to review quite a few of his videos here and there because Boxing Ego, in my view, is a guy that is kind of a double-edged sword. I think that out of any of the LDBC and new media channels, or excuse me, yeah, new media and any of the LDBC channels, out of any of those channels, I believe that the two top channels out of those guys are probably Boxing Ego and Blue Blood Sports TV. Now, of course, you're still at times going to see biasness from them. You're still going to see racial motivations, and them, in my view, get a little bit too emotional and fanboyish for their own good, which they showed very plainly in the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury situation and throughout a multitude of other situations. But in my view, both of those guys are probably the most objective of the LDBC and new media guys. Now, of course, one could also say that that's like saying overall that you're the tallest midget, or like the best, overall Canadian football player. That overall that it may not mean that much because a lot of these guys are so biased within the LDBC and new media, in my view. And of course, not just them. Ellie Seckback, as well, who I believe has his own little channel, a multitude of other guys. There was a guy by the name of Precise Presenter, that was around several years ago. He was very biased and racially motivated as well. He was a Caucasian man, I believe. There's a multitude of guys, of course, that are very racially motivated, and just too fanboyish for my taste. But, the big question is that Boxing Ego, he's been going really in on Devin Haney as of late, or especially talking about this fight. And he seems to show very little sympathy for Devin Haney's loss. And I don't really mind that because, in my view, there's only so much sympathy that I can give a fighter for losing a fight. I don't really feel bad overall for anyone that particularly loses a fight usually, unless of course something terrible happens to them, like a Preachar Cologne or maybe someone overall like a Gerald McClellan or something like that. For me, there's really no reason to feel bad for someone, unless there's maybe a little bit more of an outside factor. Now, I think that had Ryan Garcia lost this fight, that I would have felt a little bit more bad for him, particularly because Ryan Garcia, he was really having a lot of pressure on himself throughout this fight. And had Ryan Garcia lost this fight, and he knew what this fight meant, because if Ryan Garcia, had he lost this fight, Ryan Garcia would have been just looked at as another cheap Instagram model that never really should have been in boxing in the first place. That's really overall what he would have been looked at as. He would have been looked at as very mentally weak. He would have been looked at as a guy that would have been a complete hype job and someone overall that was never worth being looked at in the first place. At least that's how the majority of the boxing world would have looked at him. So the fact that he was able to win this Devin Haney fight, I think that this fight actually was more important to Ryan Garcia than what it was to Devin Haney. And I know that Devin Haney, that overall, that of course, him being one of the top fighters in the world, that of course it was severely important to him as well. But the fact that, Ryan Garcia, this wasn't overall just about his boxing career. This was pretty much about his whole entire life. If Ryan Garcia did not win this boxing fight, his whole entire life and mental state, in my view, was going to be in shambles. And I somewhat get it, but, it is what it is. But the question is, of course, that Mr. Boxing Ego, he seems to have no sympathy for Devin Haney losing. He doesn't really appear to want a rematch to happen overall for that of a Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney. And even though, once again, I agree with a lot of the points that Boxing Ego is bringing up, at least about this particular situation, the question is why? How come Boxing Ego doesn't appear to have as much sympathy for Devin Haney when in the past he's made excuses and had sympathy for certain fighters such as Jamel Charlo, Errol Spence Jr., Deontay Wilder, other fighters of that ilk, certain fighters that, of course, would be looked at as, fighters that pretty much ended up getting their ass kicked in certain events. So I seen certain comments down in this comment section, down in Boxing Ego's comment section, where they were stating, why are you going so hard on Devin Haney? Do you have a personal problem with him? What's going on? Why are you going so hard on him? What's wrong? You're not really letting up. And you notice that Boxing Ego on some of his favorite fighters like Wilder or Spence or some of the other guys, he always loves to say this stuff about, oh, well, people are just hating and they love to kick a man while he's down. And overall, I'm about giving a man his flowers. Boxing Ego is about giving a man his flowers if he's one, if he likes you as a fighter. So Errol Spence Jr., Deontay Wilder, other guys like that, he'll give you your flowers then. But if it's a guy that he needs to tear down, he's not really about giving you your flowers as much as possible. And I've been telling people this for years. And, that's what Boxing Ego and a lot of these LDBC and new media people are really about. Not me stating that Ego does not bring up a certain amount of good points. But we're going to talk about it as the video goes along, because I'm going to explain why Boxing Ego, of course, is doing this and seems to overall be a little bit harsher with Devin Haney and not treat him with kid gloves like what he does with some other fighters. Let's talk about it.
I got some bad news. Devin Haney is still suspended. In the next 30 seconds, I will prove it. As you guys can see, this is Devin Haney, and this is his box rec. I made a video about this already, so please check out that first video and subscribe to the channel. It says, Devin Haney, now it shows one loss, suspended by the New York Athletic Commission indefinitely. Operative word, indefinitely.
Well, let me tell you what, Devin Haney needs to take some time off anyway, because he got his ass kicked in a fight overall where he should have really never been losing that badly if he really was the fighter that a lot of people were alleging that he actually was. Like Dante's Boxing Nation alleging that Devin Haney was one of the Michael Jordans of the sport. Now, once again, when someone claims that someone is a Michael Jordan of the sport, in my view, when you're talking about boxing and you're claiming a quote-unquote Michael Jordan of the sport, you're talking about guys that are like Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler potentially, Muhammad Ali, Rocky Marciano, maybe even, Roberto Duran, Chavez Sr., if you want to go the Latino route, Roy Jones Jr., other guys like that, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Whoever else you want to try to put up there, Lennox Lewis, Pernell Sweepy Whitaker, whoever the fuck else you want to put up there. But the main point being is that when you talk about them being a Michael Jordan of the sport, you can't call anyone that clearly overall has not accomplished the same things in their career as some other guys, the quote-unquote Michael Jordan of the sport. But of course, what Dante really was trying to allege is that those guys were the quote-unquote clear best. But Dante's Boxing Nation and a certain amount of these other channels, they pretty much just allege that because their rankings and their opinions are basically who are our favorite black fighters. That's basically, once again, how they operate, or at least our favorite black American fighters. Because of course they didn't give the same energy to Anthony Joshua. But of course Dante's Boxing Nation, now he has to do damage control because Haney ended up getting his ass whooped completely in this fight, at least in the second half of this fight. And Haney, in my view, is going to have to take some major recovery time because Haney got majorly hurt within that fight. And we don't know, where he's going to be in his next fight. If he ended up losing his next fight, it wouldn't shock me at all. No matter who he ends up facing. If he faces a Jermaine Ortiz, if he faces a Sandor Martin, if he ends up facing, someone else like, along that ilk, and if he ends up losing the fight, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever because Devin Haney didn't just get beat in that fight. He really got beat up in the second half of that fight. I thought that Devin Haney won probably about 5 rounds in the fight. I gave him rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I also gave him round 9. Every other round I gave to Ryan Garcia. I gave Ryan Garcia rounds 1, 6, and then of course he clearly won round 7. I also thought he did enough to win round 8. And then of course, 9 went to Haney. I also gave 10, 11, and 12 to Ryan Garcia. So I scored it 7 rounds to 5 for Garcia when I rewatched it. But Haney's going to have to take some time off.
This is his box rec. Shout out to them. So once again, Devin Haney suspended by the New York Commission. Ryan Garcia, I will click on his page in front of you. Boom. Ryan Garcia, his suspension has now been lifted. Now, I know this is confusing to some people. Allow me to break it down. So Ryan Garcia is no longer suspended. After these big fights, most of the time, the commission will...
You can't always plan when you'll need a gun. Rational gun owners carry not because it's a weapon, but because it's...
will put the fighter under a temporary suspension.
Yes, they'll put them under a temporary suspension, especially, and the UFC does the same exact thing For those of you that don't watch combat sports enough, yes, they'll do a suspension because they don't want the fighter to get back in the ring, too early and potentially receive even bigger damage or even worse damage because, you're not really supposed to be taking this type of damage in the first place. But if you take an ass whooping like that, like what Devin Haney did against Ryan Garcia, get majorly hurt, and then you step in the ring again, probably 3 months later or a couple months later, and you end up getting your ass whooped just as bad, overall they cannot be somewhat liable overall for whatever possibly happens to you or anything like that. And of course they wouldn't want that because they want to potentially make money off of you, So that's pretty much overall what they do. It's pretty much for an injury slash, overall trying to preserve the fighter type of way.
Because they don't want you just fought, especially if it was a taxing fight. They don't want to, you get hurt. They don't want to be liable for anything. So
absolutely,
they're not going to authorize you to fight too quickly thereafter. I made a video about that. In that first video that I made for you guys can see Ryan was temporarily suspended by the Athletic Commission. The fight was April 20th, but as I stated in that video, his suspension was only 7 days. 7 days to the 27th. Today being the 28th, Ryan Garcia is no longer suspended, as I've showed you right there. Now, I know the fans, some of you still might be confused. So I can explain.
Well, it's really not that confusing as long as you have a brain. The simple thing overall is that Devin Haney pretty much got his ass whooped throughout the second half of this fight. He got damaged severely in the second half of this fight, damn near knocked out. Some would actually debate overall that he should have been knocked out. The question is how is Devin Haney going to bounce back from this? And another question is there going to be a rematch between these two fighters? And does Devin Haney deserve a rematch against that Ryan Garcia? Now, of course, a lot of people would debate that no, Devin Haney does not deserve a rematch against Ryan Garcia. I'm kind of on the fence about it because, I know that Ryan Garcia stated that he would not want a rematch with Devin Haney, at least not at the moment. I can't blame Ryan Garcia for that because had it ended up, going in the other fashion, I don't think Haney would have gave him a rematch either. And of course, that makes more sense because Haney was the favorite heading into this fight. So, of course, had he done what he had expected to do, then, there probably would have been no talks of a rematch. But I don't mind Ryan Garcia claiming that there's no rematch because there is no rematch clause. There was nothing like that in the deal. And Ryan Garcia, of course, he believes that he was the better man in the fight, the way better man in the fight. And of course, he believes that Devin Haney would not give him one either. So I don't really mind a rematch not happening. I would like to see a rematch personally just to see if Devin Haney could possibly make any adjustments or possibly win or do better within the fight. But I just don't think that it's going to end up happening right now.
And Ryan put on the trusted headphones. Ryan did an interview with PBD podcast, and what he said on that, I think, illustrates exactly why he's not suspended right now by the New York Athletic Commission, but Devin Haney would be. So pay close attention. Roll the clip.
How does Devin fight next? Because I understand who you want to fight.
We don't know if he's ever going to be the same.
You heard that? Listen again.
Because I understand who you want to fight.
We don't know if he's ever going to.
How does Devin fight next?
Who does Devin fight next?
Because I understand who you want to fight.
We don't know if he's ever going to be the same.
No.
Ryan Garcia responded to who does Devin fight next? Like after a fight so crazy and the outcome, who does Devin fight next? He says, we do not know if Devin Haney will ever be the same fighter after that.
How does Devin fight next? Because I understand who you want to fight.
We don't know if he's ever going to be the same.
No, but I mean,
I agree. We don't know whether Devin Haney is going to be the same or not. But another question over what I asked within this video, especially about Mr. Boxing Ego, is this is the same dude that really wanted overall the Deontay Wilder rematch for Tyson Fury, even though nobody wanted to see that fight, at least no one that did not have racial motivations overall and wanted to really see the best fight the best. No one really gave a shit for a third fight because we all knew what was going to happen, which is exactly what ended up happening. Fury ended up kicking his ass once again. Because Wilder, even for the, somewhat great contender that he is, he's just not a great boxer. That's just how, it goes. But this is the same guy that, begged Deontay Wilder to get a rematch. This is the same guy that said that Crawford, that he was acting sleazy by not giving Errol Spence Jr. a rematch, and of course he also asked for other fighters to potentially get a rematch as well. So how come Devin Haney all of a sudden doesn't deserve a rematch against that of Ryan Garcia? Because Errol Spence was probably even more dominated in his fight than what, Devin Haney was against Ryan Garcia, and Deontay Wilder was, definitely more dominated in his fight than what Ryan Garcia did to Devin Haney, because at least Haney, you could debate, won 4 to 5 rounds in that fight. You could at least debate that. Of course, he clearly lost, in my view, because of the 3 knockdowns, and Ryan Garcia, in my view, did enough to win the fight. But at the end of the day, how come Ego isn't begging for a rematch like what he did with some of his other favorite black fighters? And some people come on my channel and they say, well, Mr. Boxing Realist, this is proof of what I've been telling you, that some of these channels, that they're not quote-unquote pro-black like what you say, because they do this. That's actually not the case. What this is that Boxing Ego, once again, I always tell people this, they support the PBC, at least a lot of them do, especially Boxing Ego and a lot of the LDBC. They support the PBC fighters the majority of the time, and I have people tell me that, oh, they're not a pro-black cult because they only mainly support the PBC, blah, blah, blah. Right, but why do you think they support the PBC? The reason why they support the PBC is because it's owned by black company men out of Mr. Al Heyman. Because do they ever ride or die with certain fighters like Caleb Plant or David Benavidez? I mean, right now they're using David Benavidez, but that's pretty much to tear down Canelo Alvarez. Do you think they're going to ride or die with David Benavidez and debate that he's debatably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter over Gervonta Tank Davis or any of the PBC black fighters? Do you think that they're ever going to do that? Of course not. There's a reason why these guys ride so hard with some of the PBC black fighters. And of course, they take a look at some of these other black fighters that diss the PBC and are stuff like that. They look at them somewhat as traitors and someone overall that could be working good business with the PBC, but instead they try to kind of tear them down to a certain degree. And I get it, but that's a part of the reason why Boxing Ego, why he doesn't really have as much sympathy for Shakur Stevenson or that overall of what's his name, Devin Haney, or like that of a Terrence Bud Crawford. That's why he doesn't get along with those fighters quite as well, because they're against his agenda. They're against the PBC agenda. All right, and of course, we also have to talk about Gervonta Tank Davis. Boxing Ego and a lot of these LDBC and new media channels, they see the potentiality. They see the potential in Gervonta Tank Davis. Gervonta Tank Davis was overall, he pretty much is the perfect type of fighter for them. Because right now, Canelo Alvarez, really for the past several years, he had really been the main face of boxing, and also debatably at some points the #1 overall boxer within the whole entire boxing sphere. So right now, they take a look at Gervonta Tank Davis. He's a very exciting fighter, a guy that boxes with the PBC and supports that of Al Heyman, who of course is the company man. He's the, main guy. Of course, Gervonta Tank Davis also gets great sales. He puts on great events, and he's extremely talented. So that's why Gervonta Tank Davis receives almost no criticism whatsoever from a lot of these guys, because he's their shining star right now. That's why Boxing Ego, he'll criticize Terrence Bud Crawford, he'll criticize Canelo, he'll criticize certain other fighters, for fighting guys that aren't up to par. But then whenever it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis not fighting guys that are quote-unquote elite, then all of a sudden it's, why are you pocket watching? Why are you concerned? Why is this? Why is that? You people are just hating. Because he understands what Gervonta Tank Davis has the potentiality to be, which is the next possible not only pound-for-pound king, but the main face of boxing in terms of the money. And what that means is that if Gervonta Tank Davis is debated as both of those things in both of those categories, that he has a better argument to make sure that certain fighters like Canelo or Inoue or Lomachenko or certain fighters that may be a threat in that regard that are non-black American fighters, that overall that there's a better chance that he can debate that. Take a look at this. Take a look at the black excellence that is being displayed here. There's no way that you can debate that any of these guys are #1 pound for pound. That's the reason why Gervonta Tank Davis is so protected, because they have to hitch their wagon to his star right now. He's the new best hope potential for them. And I think that Gervonta Tank Davis has the potential to be everything that they've said that he may potentially be. But Gervonta is going to have to start getting in the ring with elite level opponents. So why is he going so hard on Devin Haney? Because the rumor around around the grapevine was that Gervonta Tank Davis was not trying to make that Devin Haney fight whatsoever. So, of course, whenever Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, or some of those guys don't have a great performance, they're going to be on their ass. So that's the main reason why Boxing Eagle really doesn't have that much sympathy for Devin Haney, and he's been posting it so much. But for Deontay Wilder and Errol Spence Jr., and if Gervonta lost, he would have a lot more sympathy for them. Because he needed Devin Haney, he needed that pressure to get off of Gervonta Tank Davis's ass.
Because the belt was on the line. Because so
3 pounds.
So Ryan, and I'm happy you went back to that. So Ryan, you lost the 3 pounds over. You drink the beer, you lose 1.5 million. Is that you lost that? Was that still the tactic? Because you knew you were going to bet, and you know.
Ryan Garcia knew that he was not going to make that weight. He knew very well coming into this fight. He didn't give a shit about making the 140-pound weight. You know, it was going to be a slight advantage for him physically and, you know, mentally, but he really didn't give a shit. Ryan didn't give a fuck whether he won the title in this fight or not. He cared about what his appearance was going to be. He didn't care about making the weight. Now, do I believe that he could have made the weight, if he really wanted to? Yeah, I believe that he could have. But I think that in Ryan Garcia's mind that he needed some sort of mental or physical edge. You know, and in his mind, it probably gave him some, you know, both a little bit. Now, do I believe that more than likely that it gave him that much more of a physical edge? No, personally, I don't. If really it gave him a physical edge at all, because once again, you could tell that Ryan didn't appear to be in the same level of physical conditioning as what he was for some of his other fights. He was breathing very heavily from the mouth. He was fighting a lot on the back foot and not throwing enough at times. You know, so it was clear that Ryan Garcia, in my view, that, you know, he was a guy that was similar in size to Devin Haney, you know, and on top of that, he just didn't have the greatest of conditioning. So people can state all they want to that, oh, Haney must have been that much more drained and blah, blah, blah. You know, don't get it twisted. Of course, you know, losing 3 extra pounds in regular circumstances, of course, you know, in my view, it means a lot. But when you talk about, you know, this, I'm sorry, I just don't think that the 3 extra pounds, especially when Ryan Garcia didn't appear to be as in well of conditioning as what, you know, he looked like he could have been. I'm just not really thinking overall that it was as big of a factor as what a lot of people are trying to allege it was. I'm sorry, that's not the reason why Devin Haney mainly lost this fight. It is what it is. So Dante and all these other guys, they can cry about that all they want to, but if we're going to go that route, then you can go that route if you want to, but then I'm also going to have to ask you this question. If the 3 pounds was such a big advantage for Ryan Garcia here because Haney was that much more weight drained, well, if Ryan Garcia is such a big guy, a guy that allegedly was this weight bully in this fight, and apparently supposedly bigger than Devin Haney, and a guy that really should be fighting at 147, you know, from what I'm hearing, you know, then are we going to count the win that Gervonta Tank Davis got over Ryan Garcia because Ryan Garcia really wanted the fight at 140, but he had to drain himself 3 extra pounds to 137? So does that mean that we don't count the win that Gervonta Tank Davis got over Ryan Garcia? Is that also what that means? But you won't hear that from these guys. And of course, it also goes vice versa. If you made the excuse that Ryan Garcia lost to Gervonta Tank Davis because of the 3 pounds, but overall you're possibly not using it for the Devin Haney thing, then in my view, you have to keep the same energy there. But losing weight or draining yourself, of course, 3 pounds below a weight class, that in my view is a little bit tougher, of course, than fighting against a fighter, you know, overall, you know, that is coming, you know, 3 pounds over the weight, you know. So, of course, one could debate that it's harder to weight drain yourself than what it is overall fighting an opponent that just came 3 pounds over the weight class. But in my view, neither of those factors, in my view, were enough to really state why those fighters ended up losing the fight.
I mean, the 12 million was the win.
Yeah, I mean, it just...
And Devin Haney fans and a lot of people are, of course, trying to debate that Ryan Garcia, that, oh, he rehydrated at 180, you know, in the fight. He was bigger than Devin Haney. No, he wasn't. Right? Ryan Garcia was probably about 160 pounds in the fight, and Haney was probably a little bit bigger than him. We all know what Devin Haney rehydrated to in his last fight at 165. So let's cut the bullshit about how Ryan Garcia was this major weight bully. Now, if you want to try to make the point that Haney was that much more drained and blah, 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 and all this other stuff, you can make that point if you want to. Because, of course, every pound matters when it comes to making the weight. But do I believe that it was that much of a factor when Haney looked full of energy in his last fight and perfectly okay, and he rehydrated 25 pounds over the weight limit, and on top of that, Ryan Garcia didn't even look to be the more conditioned fighter within this fight? So am I really biting on that as that being the main reason why Garcia won this fight? No, absolutely not. Just in my personal view.
It was an investment.
Wow.
The man said he missed weight and he looked at it as an investment. Listen.
It's an investment. One, I'm gonna be healthy, and two, that's gonna make it look worse. I'm drinking a beer on the scales.
Dude.
So he elected to be healthy and finessed Team Haney. He says, so you got one guy depleting himself to the 140, and he said he don't care. I'd rather pay the 1.5. Not only did he do that, he bet on himself to win the fight because he knew he could hurt Devin Haney, and they said he won $10 to $12 million. Wow. Ryan Garcia, the finesse god.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. After you lost.
But let's be honest. We put apple juice and sparkling water in it.
Okay.
So he's saying the whole ploy with the alcohol wasn't really alcohol, it was apple juice and sparkling cider to give that effect. So Bill handed Ryan Garcia a Psychology for Dummies book. Ryan took it and threw it, but it's clear that he had a game plan and strategy.
Listen, once again, there's only so much sympathy that I can really give to Devin Haney for losing this fight the way that he did. When it comes down to it, a lot of people, of course, are trying to say, oh, it wasn't on an even playing field. This fight, if Devin Haney was supposed to be the fighter that everyone stated that he was, this fight wasn't supposed to be close whatsoever. Devin Haney was not supposed to get hit with the shots that he got hit with. That hurt him a multitude of times throughout the fight. I would have understood, maybe had he even, won the fight 8 rounds to 4 or even 7 rounds to 5, got knocked down once or something like that. Even that I would somewhat understand. But for you to get knocked down on 3, really should have been more 4 or 5 on separate occasions. That just showed me overall that your boxing ability really was not on the same level that a lot of people were trying to say that it was. And I never thought that Devin Haney was an A+ level skilled boxer anyway. But even I thought that he was going to do a little bit better than what he did within the fight. I mean, he had a very, very, very poor performance.
In terms of, outsmarting or playing the mind up.
Like I said, if this happened to Canelo Alvarez, if this happened to Tyson Fury, if this happened to some of those other guys, got channels like Dante, Aki TV, Champside, other guys like that, they wouldn't even be bringing up that point. They wouldn't give a shit. They'd be so focused on stating on how overrated those fighters actually are and that the 3 pounds weren't that much of an advantage. Stop making excuses, because that's what it always is when one of their favorite fighters wins. Then all of a sudden, you guys are just making excuses. But then when it comes to their favorite fighters losing, then they're the first one to make excuses. And don't get it twisted. A lot of boxing fans do that in general. But we as people just have to be, at least if you're planning to be logical and objective, you have to keep the same energy around. You can't use overall this excuse for one fighter just because, you like them and then not use it for another fighter because you wanted them to lose.
In the mind games with the Haneys.
Yeah.
By the way, a lot of people say that's not beer, just so you know that. Again, these antics, what's happening with the marketing side, very, very interesting to see that happen. But I want to go back.
I told you I was going to make $100 million this year. I told you.
Yeah, and we had a whole vision as well of what could happen the next 5 years. And I saw you talk about your vision as well, next four fights, and what's going to happen. But let me ask you, now that everybody told you, Ryan, sleep in early. Ryan, don't fool around. Ryan, wake up early, 7 o'clock. Ryan, go. Yeah. For sure.
I'm fresh off the fight. And I don't have a scratch on my face, and I fought a pound-for-pound champion, undefeated, undisputed champion at 135.
So he's bragging like, I don't...
Well, he just said 175, but... and I'm sure Devin Haney could fight there with his fighting weight. But anyways, when it comes down to it, of course, joking around a little bit. But Devin Haney, of course, he was undisputed at 135. But yes, Ryan Garcia does deserve a decent amount of credit in my view for this win. Especially because almost nobody, including myself, really thought that he was going to do it. I gave Ryan Garcia, I believe, about a 10 to 20% chance to win this fight because of the raw power and athleticism that he had. I thought that he was the better athlete compared to Devin Haney, but I thought that Devin Haney would just beat him in most categories. I did not expect Haney to be that poor defensively, in my view, overall within some of those categories. But sometimes, it takes you to face a fighter that is more similar in your own same size for you to really be revealed. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know if this same thing would have happened with other fighters like Teofimo Lopez or even the best version of Josh Taylor or some of those other guys, because Ryan just has a different type of style, and Ryan is like Ryan actually might have more like Teo is known for being a great puncher. Ryan Garcia is probably a greater puncher than some welterweight fighters.
Have a mark on me. My face is untouched.
Fight. And I don't have a scratch on my face, and I fought a pound-for-pound champion, undefeated, undisputed champion at 135.
And for those of you that don't know, Oscar Duarte, who was the fighter that, of course, was brought in to beat Ryan Garcia, at least according to Oscar De La Hoya and Ryan Garcia himself. You know, Ryan Garcia, of course, was able to stop him, I believe, within relative easy fashion, within several rounds, and was able to outbox him. Oscar Duarte just recently knocked out that of Jojo Diaz. So, you know, Ryan Garcia just may be a little bit better than what we all once originally thought.
Went the distance.
And he barely went the distance because that ref.
He barely went the distance because the referee.
And he barely went the distance because that ref. You know, he would have not.
Isn't that also interesting how Dante's Boxing Nation and these other guys, they always love to bitch, moan, and complain about how the referee was always on Fury's side, and this just goes to show the corruption of boxing and all sorts of stuff. Every time one of their favorite fighters loses, it's always some bullshit excuse like the referee or all this other stuff. They didn't even mention, overall, which it should have been mentioned within this fight, and I give credit to Eagle for mentioning this. Of course, it probably would have not been mentioned had it been Gervonta Tank Davis in this situation, or a fighter that he actually gave a shit about as much. But, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, the referee was terrible in this fight, at least throughout some of those rounds, especially the 7th round, you know, or maybe not the 7th round. I think was it the 7th round? Yeah, no, I think it was the 7th round. The 7th round where Devin Haney probably should have been counted for multiple knockdowns.
I'm saying you weren't winded.
Yeah, I wasn't winded. He had a broken jaw. I mean, what more do you want?
Well, from what I'm hearing, Devin Haney doesn't actually have a broken jaw, but I mean, you never know overall what hairline fracture might be there.
Now the host starts to ask Ryan about a rematch with Devin Haney.
You almost have to have the rematch again.
No,
so let's run it back.
No.
Because you said it.
I did, but it ain't no rematch. This dude got clowned up. I barely tried, bro. I was drinking every day. On Monday, I was at Tao nightclub. Tuesdays, I was at Little Sister. Wednesdays, I went out. Thursday, I went out. Friday, I was drinking. I was doing whatever I want. The day of the fight, I drank a Blue Moon. I was chilling, bro.
And all I could say.
And Ryan Garcia, of course, as he just stated there, he was basically telling us that he really was not taking his condition as seriously as what he probably could have. But in my personal view, and some people might say, well, do you believe personally that he's lying about that, or do you believe that he's telling the truth? I think that it's a little bit of a mixed truth. I think that Ryan Garcia was not training in terms of conditioning quite as hard as what he was for Gervonta Tank Davis. But to be quite honest with you, I think that for Ryan Garcia that it actually was an advantage. And the reason why I state that is because sometimes when you don't drain yourself overall to the same degree, or you're making yourself a little bit more mentally comfortable, I think overall that is going to be better for you than possibly even doing that. Now, is that me stating that in his next fight that he should do this? No. But Ryan Garcia, once again, a lot of people are saying, oh, he fooled you guys with the mental stuff. No, Ryan Garcia was going through some mental shit. And even he admitted that right before the Devin Haney fight that he had cried so much before the Devin Haney fight because he was feeling so much pressure. So Ryan Garcia more than likely was drinking sometimes. He probably was overeating a little bit at times. But I think that Ryan Garcia was taking a look at it and said, you know what? I'm going to put myself in the most right place of mind that I can be. I'm going to just make myself comfortable. If I don't make the weight, who gives a shit? No one cares really whether I win the belt or not. People just care whether I win this fight. Because if I don't win this fight, then I'm going to be looked at as a complete fraud throughout my career, and someone that really should have just been an Instagram model, and someone that never should have been in professional boxing in the first place. He knew that had he lost this fight, that he would have never heard the end of it, and that he would have been shamed for the rest of his career. Now, after Ryan Garcia ends up winning, even if he ends up losing his next fight, Ryan Garcia is going to be looked at in a completely different light. You know, he might be looked at in a worse light than what he would if he did become a champion, but Ryan Garcia didn't care. He just wanted to win this fight.
Wow.
But once again, if this was Canelo, if this was someone else overall in that situation, Dante and some of these other channels, they'd be absolutely crucifying that fighter. They'd be like, can you believe that Canelo lost to a guy that was doing nothing but drinking and doing nothing but this and that, and you know, he wasn't in the best of conditioning, and he was looked at as a guy that was a C grade level fighter, and he got his ass beat that bad? This just goes to show you how much of a hype job he was. That's exactly what Dante would be stating if it was Tyson Fury, Canelo, Usyk, or some of these guys in that exact same situation. That's exactly what he'd be saying.
Ryan Garcia.
But when it comes to Devin Haney, he has to mention the 3 extra pounds of weight.
When asked about a rematch with Devin Haney, he says, no, I know I said I was open to it, but he said he thought about it. And he's like, why should I give him a rematch? He got clowned up. I have no marks on my face. I did what I want. The referee saved him, etc., etc.
Referee definitely was showing a little bit of favoritism at times. I mean, just like how Shannon Sharp and Stephen A. Smith said in that one video, like, damn, dude, like, is he a family member or something? Like, no offense, but, like, the referee was giving constant warnings to Ryan Garcia. I seen almost no warnings towards Devin Haney whatsoever. The man saved his ass from a couple of other knockdowns. Like, come on, like, what's really going on here?
So he's like, why?
Let me figure out overall the referee put a fucking parlay on on Devin Haney or some shit. Or, you know, overall ended up putting a bet on him to win the fight.
Should I give him a rematch? And then there's a lot of fans that are going to side with Ryan because Devin didn't give Lomachenko a rematch, and that was a close fight. This fight, to me, wasn't really all that close, given how it played out. And Ryan was also cheated. It should have been a stoppage. He was cheated with knockdowns.
Well, one could debate overall that it could have been a stoppage. One could possibly state that, but, you know, I don't really mind the fight not being stopped. Devin Haney showed a lot of heart. You know, and it's also interesting on Boxing Ego. Remember when Errol Spence Jr. and Deontay Wilder, when they ended up losing their fights, he said, man, you know, you got to give them that. They at least have a warrior's heart. There's none of that from Boxing Ego because he don't give a fuck, really, that Devin Haney ended up losing this fight. They're trying to promote Gervonta Tank Davis. They don't give a fuck right now what happens to Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney because that's pressure off of Gervonta Tank Davis's ass.
That weren't counted and stuff like that. So he was cheated with knockdowns that weren't counted and stuff like that. So he paid his penalty as far as the weight. If your team is willing to let Ryan finesse and game you with a weight strategy and you go forth with it, then you can't really blame. No one told you. You had Arnold
I agree.
Barbosa on the card. You could have pivoted to him, and he made the weight. He's in the same weight division, and Golden Boy said that Barbosa is brought in case Ryan doesn't make weight, in case Ryan pulls out, in case Ryan was acting too unpredictable. So they brought in an understudy just in case the lead actor, Ryan Garcia, didn't make it for the play.
Well, the big part of the reason why this loss hurts so much for Devin Haney is not just because, of course, they fought 6 times in the amateurs and this was going to reveal, you know, who was going to be the better fighter of the two. You know, it wasn't going to just be that, the reason why this stung so bad. But Devin Haney stuck with the fight because he knew that this would put a lot of pressure on Gervonta Tank Davis into possibly taking the fight. Because I don't know really how much, you know, the sales did. I don't know if they did bad. I don't know if they did really good. I don't know. But I have to assume more than likely that it at least did 400,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, I could be wrong about that. Someone would have to correct me on the actual numbers. But I haven't even heard what the actual numbers are. But Devin Haney knew that this was going to really catapult, you know, the case for him fighting Gervonta Tank Davis next and possibly taking over as the best fighter around those weight divisions if he could beat that of Gervonta Tank Davis. Which, of course, I'm not really sure if he would, even that he won this fight. You know, but taking a look at it after this, you know, this pretty much destroys his whole reputation as being the quote-unquote better fighter than that of Gervonta Tank Davis.
We're so confident. Your team was so confident that you would win. You chose to press on with the fight, take the penalty money. It is what it is. Now, as far as the suspension, let's recap. Ryan just said in that podcast that Devin may not be the same fighter anymore, which is ironically what Boxing Ego said. I said he took a lot of unnecessary punishment with Bill Haney and team not throwing in.
Well, I agree, but that's not really that hard to figure out. I mean, when a fighter ends up getting their ass kicked this badly, it's very, you know, it's not that hard to concur overall that a fighter may not be the same after a type of performance like this. And there's some times where that ends up happening. Now, of course, Devin Haney didn't end up getting stopped within this fight, but he might as well because, I mean, he got so badly hurt throughout the second half of this fight. I mean, it was really bad.
The towel, so we'll have to see how that looks. Now Ryan's saying the same thing. Bernard Hopkins says Devin could be the next Meldrick Taylor. Oscar De La Hoya.
That's actually not the worst comparison, because Devin Haney, in my view, he's not a Floyd Mayweather Jr. He's a guy that probably was very comparable to Meldrick Taylor, someone that, in my view, was very athletically talented, but not someone, in my view, that I would ever call one of the all-time greats in terms of all-around skill set.
Put a tweet saying that beating is going to last a while for Devin Haney, and you can't really blame anybody else who played chess while you were playing checkers. Now you guys understand why Devin Haney has been suspended, and he still remains suspended. Devin said the fight was close.
Well, of course. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to understand. He took sustainable damage in that fight.
Devin said he thought the fight was still close post-fight. His team saying he does.
Well, I mean, you could argue that Devin Haney won 5, rounds, maybe 6 if you want to be a little bit generous. I think any more than that is being a little bit too generous. But, in my view, I scored at 114 to 110, 7 rounds to 5 for Ryan Garcia. Now, of course, channels like Dante and Aki TV, they're going to try to make you believe that it should have actually been a draw, and they're already trying to put that out there. But no, you can't get knocked down 3 separate times in this fight. Really should have been more than that, which it's interesting. You won't hear Dante or any of the other channels talk about that, because it doesn't favor their narrative. But no, this was given to the right fighter.
Doesn't have a broken jaw, yet Ryan's suspension has been lifted while Devin remains suspended. So this is just a bad loss, and sometimes in boxing, you can't have a night quite like that. Devin Haney officially suspended still while Ryan is on this victory lap tour, doing podcasts, meeting up, linking with Donald Trump, linking up with Deion Sanders. It's ugly. Devin has to rest up and see what his next move is.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it. I just thought that I would review that video because I did agree with a lot of points on Mr. Boxing Ego. But once again, it's just interesting how, depending on the fighter, he's willing to show so much more sympathy towards them. But there's a multitude of reasons why he's not doing that with Devin Haney, mainly because Devin Haney is now with the PBC, and Devin Haney was putting a lot of pressure on their new bright and shining star, Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. He was putting a lot of pressure on him. All right, him and Shakur Stevenson. So that's why you're not going to hear as much positive feedback about those two fighters as what you will Gervonta Tank Davis. Gervonta right now, in their view, needs to be protected at all costs because he has the highest potential out of any of them. But we'll see overall what ends up happening. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. I just thought that I would kind of talk about that. Very particularly interesting. Do I believe that Devin Haney deserves a rematch? Well, I guess it's now really up to him. I would like to see a rematch personally, just to see if Devin Haney could possibly make any adjustments. But Ryan Garcia doesn't appear that he's going to give him a rematch. I don't blame him because Devin Haney would have not gave him a rematch. This was the 7th fight out of them. Of course, they fought 6 times in the amateurs. Ryan Garcia, he's on a great streak right now. But I'll state this. Ryan Garcia needs to be careful in this next fight. He's going to have to be more focused. He's going to have to stop some of the drinking. He's going to have to stop doing some of the other stuff. Because I do believe that he did do a little bit of that. I have no doubt about that in my mind. That he was drinking, maybe even smoking a little bit. Not as much overall as what maybe he claims. But I definitely do think that he was doing that to a certain degree. I have no doubt about it with the way that he was acting at times. Ryan Garcia definitely was trying to deal with the, surmountable amount of pressure in this fight in some sort of way. But it is what it is. But we'll see what ends up happening. But I would like to see a rematch eventually between these two. I just don't think it's going to happen, at least at the current moment in time. So that's what I personally believe. I just don't think it's going to happen. Who would I like to see Devin Haney in the ring with next? Pretty much anyone that he believes overall is perfect for him to kind of revitalize his career. And as for Ryan Garcia, I'd like to see Arnold Barboza, Cruz, Subriel Matias, any one of those fighters. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's pretty much about it. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.